This week on To the Contrary. Sexual assault on campus and in the military. Colleges try to tackle a problem that some researchers say has reached epidemic levels.
What is sexual assault? What are the penalties? It's a crime.
Then,
we need to put military justice in the hands of trained military prosecutors who have no skin in the game.
I'm Bonnie Urbay. Welcome to the Contrary, a discussion of news and social trends from diverse perspectives. This week, an in-depth exploration of sexual assault, from prevention to reporting and discipline. We begin on America's college campuses. Colleges continue to try to figure out how to follow recommendations of the report by the White House Task Force to protect students from sexual assault. The Campus Sexual Violence Act requires colleges to offer training and education to incoming students and employees, but research finds awareness programs aren't that effective in changing attitudes or behavior.
Change the culture. And that's the most difficult thing to do, and it is a thing that we must do within the college campuses. And it begins from the very top, and it goes through all of the faculty and all the administrators and everything. And it also goes to every incoming class and every class as it goes along. An awareness. What is sexual assault? What are the penalties? It's a crime.
Also under scrutiny is how schools investigate, hold hearings on, or punish sexual assault perpetrators. Some lawmakers want to see local law enforcement take over that role. The Campus Accountability and Safety Act would, among other things, require colleges to create uniform processes and give victims confidential advisors.
Have people on campus that are trained so that whoever the student needs to go to, they're not in far reach. So that if a student needs to talk to a faculty member, maybe they don't feel like they want to go to our Title IX officer at UDC. Maybe they feel as though they want to go to their professor.
Right now, the campus review process is different across the board. There's very little transparency and accountability, and so we have a bill to professionalize that process as well, to have minimum training, to have online campus surveys so people can know what's the climate like at each school every 2 years. And we also want to have a relationship developed with law enforcement so that if a survivor wants to go to the criminal justice system, that's already decided about how to do that.
When Senator McCaskill, who did a survey, one of the things it showed was that in 40% of the cases, if an athlete at a university had been accused of sexual assault, the people who were doing the investigation was the athletic department. It should and must be investigated by a department that has the tools and the know-how and the ability to investigate it impartially.
So, Ellie Smeal, is campus assault more prevalent than it used to be, or are we just hearing more about it?
We don't know for sure, but we do know it's on an unacceptable level.
There's no question that it has always existed. I don't think it's necessarily worse. I do believe the media has allowed us to get more into the issue.
I think what we're seeing now, Bonnie, is a major cultural shift where we have young women making their voices heard on this issue and fantastic female legislators who are passing major pieces of legislation to regulate sexual assault.
I think that we're talking about it more, and it's in the media more today.
The Ms. Foundation has the Feminist Majority Foundation, has a huge campus outreach. How many women, college women, are you in touch with at one time?
Oh, huge number, because we're in 45 states and we're over several hundred campuses. And this is no question. It's a Northeast, Southwest, small school, big school, it's a problem.
And are colleges and universities really equipped to adjudicate these cases, or why did it ever start that this is something that, unlike any other crime, shouldn't just get reported and turned over to the police?
Well, the colleges, some of them felt they had something at stake. They wanted it to appear that the school was tranquil and it was safe, and so they weren't reporting. In fact, they were under-reporting. Now there's laws that they must report, and in fact, even with that, If a young woman goes to authorities on that campus, she could be talked out of reporting. There is an effort, I think, to suppress the real numbers. But one of the things for sure, there's a movement on campuses among young people, especially survivors. They're not going to take it anymore.
Do you think if you had been assaulted and you had gone to school authorities, could you have been talked out of reporting it somehow?
Not me personally. If I would go, my focus would be to go to the authorities, to the police, off campus. Now, I would report it to campus because I think it's important that they know what their students are doing, and they should address that. So if a female has been assaulted, she needs to say who it was. That student needs to be brought in, and he needs to be penalized in whatever way a college can, whether it's being taken off the campus and not going back to school, what have you. But no, it's important that young women, in some instances, some young men know that it is a crime and it needs to be reported to authorities. Schools are about money. Booster clubs, when you talk about athletes and things that they do on campus and get away with it, I mean, all of it needs to be cleaned out personally.
Do young women on campus, or young men for that matter, who are assaulted on campus and try to go to the police, are they ever turned back and said, no, deal with your college on this?
Well, no. If they actually go to the police, now, see, one of the things that's so confusing is some of these schools are as big as a city. They have 50,000 people. They have their own police force. So there's a reason that the kids don't know exactly where to report. But one of the things that this youth movement on campus is doing is they're trying to tell young women what are their rights, and young men, for example, to get a rape kit, to know about Title IX, to know about the Clery Act and the Safe Campus Act. I mean, it sounds like a lot, but essentially they're breaking it down. They're trying to make sure that a student knows their rights.
I think it comes down to two things. It comes down to accountability and awareness. I think both of those are lacking on college campuses today, all the way up the chain through leadership at the college and taking accountability for things that happen on their campuses, as well as educating their students from everything to the laws that surround sexual assault, the reporting procedures, and then also lifestyle choices like alcohol and drugs and where that may lead, putting it in very unfortunate circumstances, just some things that can happen because of those two things, I think, need to be talked about more on college campuses.
Now, Jenifer, you talked about young women mobilizing. Tell me about that, A, and B. Is the message too, should the message also be, don't go to a frat party and get drunk and expect, that you will walk out safely, because you're putting yourself in a situation where your chances are not very good?
Well, we've been seeing many instances of young women mobilizing. For example, Emma Solkowitz at Columbia, who carried the mattress around campus in protest of what she experienced, which ended up becoming a national movement where many women all around the country began carrying mattresses. So that was an incredible exercise of free speech that really helped put this issue on the map.
And yet Columbia turned her away anyway. So what does that do? That plus the UVA rape allegations that were in the Rolling Stone article that got completely taken apart upon examination. What does that do to young women who may be assaulted now and say, oh my God, if I try to report, something like this may happen?
Well, yes, Columbia did not find in her favor, but when she graduated just last month and she walked across the stage, she got a standing ovation. And I really think that says a lot. I think that our country is trying to find a way to best handle this, and we're really grappling with it right now.
Your thoughts about whether these two incidents are going to make it tougher on young women to report assaults, or young men who are assaulted?
I don't think so. And the reason I don't think so is that if anything, it raises more awareness of the problem. But by the way, these instances obviously are just the tip of an iceberg. We just kind of look at the magnitude of the problem. And there has been convictions. I don't want people to think that there hasn't been harsh penalties. There has been. in some cases. In fact, some universities have paid huge fines. We're talking over $1 million settlements. And one of the problems is some of them are confidential. But there is some justice that is occurring. And I think more will occur as more women report, as more know their rights.
Why are we, you raise a very interesting point. Why is it that these huge 7-figure settlements are getting approved, and yet the ones getting all the media attention are the ones that are not, where the assault victim is not, does not, yeah, right.
Well, maybe it's the sensationalism of the media, but the reality is.
Have you seen much reporting of the settlements?
No,
or are they all done?
In fact, you have to almost look for them. You're surprised, but there's university.
Isn't your?
We're trying to get it out, no question. And in fact, one of the things that's happening.
So
with
tell
this movement,
us here about these big.
Well, at the University of Colorado, there was a huge settlement, and not only that, there was the top lost their jobs. So and I could go on more. I mean, the University of Connecticut, another settlement, but I think
top women's basketball school.
Top women's basketball school. They had a problem, and the 2 kids went to court, and I think that settlement was $2.5 million. So basically, that's why I wanted to put that in. It's not like there aren't really serious cases. And right now, there's over 10,000, I think it's 10,000 Title IX complaints at the Department of Education, Office of Civil Rights. And there's a lot of schools that are being investigated. So I think there'll be more penalties and more, the schools for their own sake are going to have to take this on. This is not acceptable. Well, I mean,
we're hearing more about that, but we also need to hear the stories about perpetrators who have been convicted. Now, I don't know what those numbers are. Maybe your organization does, but it's important to see both. I mean, when you hear about a settlement, I guess from an attorney's point, from me, I think about, well, you got some cash and you're moving on, and I don't mean to sound so blatant about it, but it's more important to me. I would think as a woman and as someone who might have been assaulted or could have been assaulted, that I want to make sure this person who did it to me gets punished. He gets whatever he deserves to get. And, and as well as the education that you talked about on campus, we also need to look at parents. And, yes, they're adults, quote unquote, because they go off at 18 or 19 and live on their own. But the fact is, parents need to be more involved before they leave to go to campus, and be involved in their lives when they're on campus. Because I think if we had more adults, i.e. parents, grandparents, guardians, in and out of that area, I think we might have a little bit more, consciousness of what's really happening.
But are there any data to show that young women who are more involved with their parents, because a lot of the college kids I know are texting and phone calling and emailing many times every day, are less likely to be assaulted?
I don't know if there's statistics on that. I guess just from a parent's perspective, I think the more you're involved, and I'm not saying you need to micromanage kids, but I am saying that schools need to know if you're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars to them, you're writing a check for your kid to go there, they need to know if something happens to my kid, you're going to pay for it.
So I agree it's always good to have parental involvement. I think that's very good. But I'm also encouraged by a lot of other proposals on the table to deal with it. For example, giving greater funding to the Civil Rights Office of the Department of Education so that they can investigate and really enforce Title IX on campuses, and assigning confidential counselors to young women who come in with complaints so that they're not alone in this process.
But that's something new that they're doing now, right, is assigning counselors?
Well, I think that is something that students should have available to them if they are victims of sexual assault. I think confidentiality is important because, as we've all talked about, this is a very sensitive issue, and that's why a lot of victims don't want to come forward. So when you guys were talking about media awareness, a lot of victims don't want their stories out there. They want whatever settlement happens, whatever is the outcome of the lawsuit, and then they want to move on. They might not want it to be a national headline in the news, so they try to keep it from the media the best they can.
All right. Let us know what you think. Please follow me on Twitter at Bonnie Urbay. From sexual assault on campus to the military. Despite military reforms, sexual assault victims face retaliation if they report crimes, according to Human Rights Watch. Researchers found, quote, if you come forward and report sexual assault, you're 12 times more likely to face retaliation than you are to see your perpetrator convicted.
Last year alone, there were nearly 20,000 cases of sexual assault, rape, and unwanted sexual contact. And 75% of the men and women who have been assaulted don't have confidence in the military justice system. We also have a problem with retaliation. 62% of men and women who were raped were retaliated against when they reported that rape.
The Department of Defense reports sexual assaults are down and reporting is up. But Senator Kirsten Gillibrand of New York says the data don't include assaults against military spouses or civilians who live or work near military facilities. They are therefore distorted.
I think it's the Department of Defense being defensive. In fact, there are 52 rapes a day. That is far too many. And the numbers they cite are the same as they were in 2010. I do not see the kind of reform and the kind of progress that we need to see. I think if you take the decision-making out of the chain of command, where the perception is that justice isn't possible, and give that authority to trained military prosecutors, people will have more confidence in the system.
Representative Sanchez wants commanders held responsible.
I'm talking about holding the commanding officer for the health and welfare of each and every one of those soldiers. And if he or she is good at their job, they will ensure that there is redress, that there is prosecution, that there is an evidence gathering process. And one of the things that we've done is we've put a lot of those things in place for the commanding officer to be able to do the job the right way. And if he or she can still not do it, I don't want them commanding. Don't want them commanding.
Sexual violence is not just a problem for women. In the predominantly male military, more men than women are victims of sexual assault, but a higher rate of women are attacked. So, Amber, you're a retired helicopter pilot in the military. Do you think the military is doing a better job now than, say, in the days of Tailhook, which was the first major media exposure of sexual assault in the military going on?
The military has made significant progress in terms of combating sexual assaults, and the numbers don't lie. In 2014, a RAND Corporation survey found that 18,900 military members were victims of unwanted sexual contact. That is down 27% from 2012. So that is progress. The military is taking significant steps to fix this, because what it comes down to is when their soldiers are victims of sexual assault, that hurts military readiness. And so we need to fix this, and I think they're taking appropriate steps to ensure that happens.
Everybody agree or anyone disagree?
No, I don't agree. I personally think it must be taken out of the chain of command, because frequently the commander is either an abuser or a friend of the abuser. In essence, we've had hearing upon hearing that says the military must do more. And right now the underreporting in the military is very high because of fear of retaliation. And studies show that retaliation is in the 60 percentiles. So it isn't a solved problem. That's why women in Congress are pushing for stricter rules.
Can I respond to that? So first of all, I think it's completely speculative and unfounded to say that a commander is the abuser or the friend of an abuser. You have to remember that these are professionals in their job. There is nothing saying that if you take command authority away from the chain of command, that victims are going to feel more willing to come forward and state their case and say what happened, or that it's going to somehow fix military sexual assault just because it's a civilian prosecutor versus military under Uniform Code of Military Justice. What needs to happen is a cultural change, and we're seeing that happen. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time.
Because women are only about 15% of the services right now, so you were among a much smaller group of your gender colleagues than men were. Were you personally aware of any situations where a woman was assaulted by a male commander or friend of the CO and had a problem with that.
No, and actually the military has taken steps to prevent that. I was in one of the units that, one of the combat arms units that only allows females. So I was in in big picture, military-wide, male-dominated. I was in it even more because of my specialty and my job position. But what the military has done to ensure that there are those safe measures for people who do come forward and report is they have victim advocates and they have sexual assault response coordinators that are completely confidential, and a lot of commanders that has a soldier in the chain of command that has come forward, they will recommend to that soldier to go to either the victims advocate or the response coordinator because they think they might be better at handling that. And also the victim has the choice to do a reported or an unreported filing of what happened, which means one is completely confidential and they basically gets to pick and choose if the command has any involvement, and the other one is an unrestricted where the chain of command is involved. So it's up to the victim to make that choice.
I find it interesting that that Congresswoman Sanchez, Representative Sanchez, and Senator Gillibrand are on different sides about taking it out of the military command. What are your thoughts?
Well, I think as I listen to everybody...
Even though they're both Democrats.
As I listen to everybody here and to the Congresswoman, what I'm hearing is that I think we can all agree that we need to professionalize this process. I think we can all agree with that. I think we can all agree that when our brave women are not protected, that is a major issue.
And men.
And men.
Numerically,
yes, and men.
The rates are higher against women, but the numbers are higher against men.
That's right.
Right. It would seem to me that leaving it in the hands of a commander, and with that the only recourse, it would seem to me that may not keep our women safe in the military. And so it seems to me that Senator Gillibrand's idea of taking it out of the chain of command would be a logical step. But I think Sanchez wants to put the emphasis on holding the commanders accountable, which I think is also important. I don't see the two as mutually exclusive.
Yeah, I mean, I don't believe that it should be removed from the military. I think they're totally capable of handling it. It's just a matter of informing people of what their rights are and not being, hushed down for it because, if you do, you're going to be reprimanded for it, or you're going to be treated differently as a result of reporting it. So, I mean, those things are important to address. But I don't think removing it from as you said, the UCLJ, Military Code of Justice, rather, is going to be a good thing. What
about that? I mean, one difference between the way schools handle it and the way the military have handled charges of sexual assault is that the military has a JAG, Judge Advocate General's office, which can throw people in jail and all sorts of things, which schools don't have.
Yeah, but one of the problems with the military right now is if the commander doesn't want to refer it to the military, to the authorities like a JAG, it doesn't get referred. So we're not, taking it out
even
of the
with
chain
the confidential.
Because basically it's the commander that makes the decision, and what we're saying is it shouldn't be the commander of that unit, which has a lot of pressure.
That's actually not necessarily 100% true. The commander can advise the Judge Advocate General, the lawyer, the prosecutor. They can advise them and they talk about the facts and what happened.
But they can
together they make a decision whether or not to prosecute or not. And actually, under Uniform Code of Military Justice is much stricter than if you get prosecuted in the civilian world. So when people talk about, get prosecuted by a civilian lawyer, suddenly there's going to be much higher numbers of prosecution, that is incorrect.
Well, you're talking about now whether it's civilian versus military. Taking it out of the chain of command could keep it to another military function. What you're trying to do is take it out of that unit, and so that there could be a more objective thing. And let's be real here.
That's interesting, though, because I think most people, myself included, when the term taking it out of the chain of command is used, I always think referring it to the local DA.
No. It doesn't necessarily mean that.
Is that there is that option of not going through your chain of command. The victim has the option to choose whether or not they want their file to be restricted. It is true, actually. I've written about it. Yes, the military, the Uniform Code of Military Justice does not apply to a branch. It applies to the military as a whole. You have the opportunity to talk about it completely confidential, which means your chain of command never finds out. And even if a victim does go to their commander, they have, I've talked to many military members who say, as commanders, I want my soldier to go through that sexual assault response coordinator because they are going to know what's best for that victim. So the chain of command
the commander still knows whether the
of course they know.
No, but that's if the victim came forward to the commander.
Well, let's put it this way, is that why is there such a high level of retaliation? Why is there so little reporting? There's so little reporting because they're afraid of retaliation. So, I mean, come on, this is not a perfect world, and most people will admit to that. I mean, the hearings have been outrageous.
All right, that's it for this edition. Please follow me on Twitter and visit our website, pbs.org/tothecontrary. And whether you agree or think to the contrary, see you next week.